Good morning. How's the sound? Good? Okay. Let me have a little sound check here. Earth, this, it. Okay, good. Not too loud? So I can yell at you? It's okay? Yeah. Too loud? Can we adjust the volume a bit? How's that? 1, 2, 3, okay. Good thing about filming, recording the Dharma talks, they can edit all this type of stuff out. So, how's your retreat going? Yeah, are you finding it beneficial? A lot of hands waving, some smiles. Let's see, any anguish-looking faces? Distressed? Get me out of here. No? Okay. Okay. You're healthy, alive, and awake. A little more awake today. Yeah. I thought I would start this Dharma talk with a meditation. Okay. And the meditation is about the interconnectedness of things. Things being everything, anything. So I want to pose a question. What did it take, or what does it take, for you to have this present moment experience? Okay. What does it take, or what has it taken, to have this present moment experience? And we can look at this in multiple ways. We can look at it in sort of what I call the horizontal field, which is the things that are taking place in this very moment, such as we have this hall, right? We cannot have this present experience without this hall. We can't have this present experience without the trees outside, because we see them, it's part of our experience. Or the cushion you're sitting on. Then there's the other type of field, which I call the vertical field. It's a historical field. What has taken place in the past for you to be here today? Okay, maybe you came from the airport in an Uber, or some inspiration, or an aspiration, or the basic fact that your parents had a child. Yeah. Everything, we can link everything together in the present moment and in the past. Okay? So that's your meditation question. We'll sit about 5-10 minutes, something like that. Okay? So find your meditation position, your back straight, upright, not rigid. Yeah. And we'll begin with 3 sounds of the bell. come out of our meditation. A little clarity, perhaps. There's a real danger to leading meditation. So when I begin to sit and meditate, I just want to forget about the clock. So conditions, causes. What came up for you? What did your mind reveal with that question? So that's a real question, not rhetorical. So go ahead and share. Yes. The birth of the universe. Here? Problem solving. Right. Okay. Suffering. The decision to be here. That's a big one. Gentlemen? Yeah, all the conditions of Vietnam War, climate change, the difficulties in society, global society. Yes? Wow, and that inspired you to be here for this present moment, yeah. Or a factor. Yes, in the back. The same space in the room is the same space in your brain. You have a lovely brain. It's very nice. Yeah. Yes.
Be present, I need to slow down.
To slow down, the need, the desire. Yeah. Okay, so if you notice, this is a big thing. Okay. When I kind of look at this right off, I think about the space here, the fact that we're on the earth, rotating round and round, circling the sun. That has to take place, right? I think about all of you being here, because I wouldn't be having a Dharma talk to an empty hall. Well, maybe. Yeah. The fact that I'm a monastic, and I'm up here speaking. And each one of those has its own thread, its own story. For example, take this building. What did it take to build this building? Architect, planning, county government, permits. Someone had to come in here and actually put it together. Carpenters. And someone had to make their alarm clock for them to get up in the morning to come here, come to work. And someone had to make their car to do that. And it goes on and on and on. If the dinosaurs were still around, we wouldn't be here, right? Because the scientists tell us they had to die off in order for the mammals to propagate enough. So it's a huge thing. And these are our associations, you might say. And it's interesting listening to some of the answers. Yeah. It sounds like a lot of people are willing to go towards being associated with the difficult things just as much as being associated with the wonderful things. Difficult, wonderful. Yeah. We sing songs here a lot. And we sing songs about, being the cloud, the rain, the koi in the fish pond, the planet, the earth, love, being Buddha. So, yeah, those are the types of things that we find very nourishing. We want to be around the positive things in our life. Yeah, that's natural. But yet, we have difficulties in life. Yeah, we have suffering in life. We have challenges in life. We have things that don't quite fit, things that we don't want to fit, relationships. I think about my past and what has brought me to this point in my life. I look at my parents. My father was born and was raised on a farm in central Wisconsin. His father had died when he was very young, so he had to basically take responsibility at 16, 17 of the farm. And he hated that. And so when he was of age, he joined the Navy to get off the farm, and he fought in the Pacific Theater in the Navy. At that time, eventually he had some shore leave, and he met his mom, my mom, and fell in love, got married, voila, here I am. So it's very challenging to reconcile having gratitude and thanking someone like Adolf Hitler, who was the most detested individual in modern history. He created an enormous suffering. Yeah. So many dimensions. But yet, if it wasn't for that, my father wouldn't have gone off to war and met my mother. I wouldn't be here. We would not be having this shared experience. Yeah. So, and that's a challenge. That's a challenge. Do I have that kind of compassion? I look at the issue of climate change. It's a huge issue. It's very big because it encompasses the entire earth and everyone and everything on it. And people have been working diligently when voices weren't being heard for quite some time. Yeah. And we look at it and we think it's daunting, that there's no hope. That, what are we going to do? So many questions. So many questions. So much concern. There's fear, doubt, despair. I talk to people who are very involved, and I hear their grief, their difficulties, hopelessness, not being able to make change. Yeah. But here we are, having this shared experience. We would not be having an Earth Holder retreat if it wasn't for the climate change. Here we have the possibility of something good. I don't know, when I ask, are you benefiting from this retreat? Everyone goes, yeah, right. But sometimes it takes difficulties for beauty to evolve. Okay, Tai talks about the mud in the lotus. Here's the mud, here's the lotus. The mud representing all the difficulties of life, and out of that comes the lotus. Awakening, beauty. And so I look at this climate project, this human project. Yeah. And I see how many people it's uniting. More than we're aware of. We have our little life and we're involved in this, involved in that. But if you look at the larger picture of what's going on around the planet, I like to read the news. I'm kind of a news junkie. And I read about all these stories of everything going on. All the awareness that's taking place. And I'm wondering if a new awareness, an evolution of awareness, is taking place in the world. Okay, something this big requires big change. Yeah. Maybe something really good is happening, coming out of what we perceive as the difficulties. The inner is the outer, and the outer is the inner. Okay. So we're going to take a look at a few things of the Dharma, of the teachings. Yeah. These are called the three roots, or the three poisons. Desire, hatred, ignorance, or attraction, aversion, and ignorance or delusion. And they're called the three roots because they're motivators. They're motivators in our mind. Okay. It's what we operate on, although we don't know it. Okay. And the Buddha was looking at the mind, observing the mind and the process and what's going on and how do we account for suffering? How does suffering happen? The Buddha taught there was suffering, difficulties, there's the end of suffering, difficulties, there's a place where we can be without difficulties and suffering, a space within us, within our heart, in our minds, and the path leading away from suffering and difficulties. Not that everything is suffering, but there is suffering, right? Right? We've had some, yeah, sure. So how does that operate? Okay. How does that work? And the Buddha looked at the mind and he saw three basic elements: aversion, attraction, and ignorance. Desire, attraction, or greed, it's the wanting of things, right? We want this, we don't want that. Who can relate to that? Okay, yeah. I tell you, I don't know when I've seen so many Maseratis since I moved back to California. You don't see Maseratis in New York. Yeah. They are a very beautiful car. I keep trying to convince the brothers they make a wonderful Sangha car. They won't bite. Won't bite that. Yeah. So we can take a look at the desires in our lives. Then there's hatred or aversion or ill will. I don't want that. We can all relate to that, right? Yeah. What don't you want? Suffering. Yeah. Bills. Yeah. Insurance. Yeah. The list can go on and on, right? Pain. Yeah. The neighbor with the rock band, and go on and on. What we don't like. Then there's illusion, or delusion, or ignorance. Not knowing. Okay. Now, not knowing. Not knowing what? Exactly. Yeah, not knowing what. For example, growing up, I had a fairly difficult time growing up. My father was an alcoholic, probably a product of PTS, but we didn't call it. That wasn't in our vocabulary or understanding in my generation. So life was very difficult, and I suffered a lot over that. The family has suffered a lot over that, and it wasn't until I started getting a little older, into my teens, and I realized, wow, this isn't normal. You grow up thinking this is normal, thinking, oh, this is the way it is. This is how life is. Then you get to a point in your life, and wow, this ain't normal. And then when I looked at my own actions and behavior, being a child of alcoholic, I discovered, wow, I have my own issues because of that. Yeah. Although I thought I was the average Joe. Yeah. Yeah. So going from ignorance to awareness. Okay. So these three things are factors in our lives. Consciously and subconsciously. Okay. And it doesn't just, as some of you indicated, it's not just about things, like Maseratis or chocolate cake or food I don't like, But it also speaks to how we approach ourselves. And it also speaks to our mental process. Someone had said they don't like suffering. Yeah, how many like suffering? How many like pain? Well, there's one back there. Yeah. So we have this natural tendency, this habit energy of veering away from things we don't like, feelings we don't like, emotions we don't like, ideas we don't like. And we do this on a subconscious level. And so instead of that, we find a way to supplement, right? Life in a consumer society offers us so many wonderful things, to keep us entertained. Yeah. Okay, so I'm dealing with this, I don't like this, I'm going to go see a movie. Or I'm going to go hang out with friends. Or I'm going to work more. Delve into my job. Don't want to deal with this. And we do this naturally, because we weren't taught anything different. Yeah. We were ignorant of the fact that these kind of things happen. That's the way the mind works. Yeah. And, these things we need to learn to understand and accept and see in our own minds. Yeah. So, desire, hatred, and ignorance. So, we have these three roots, these three motivators that account for our actions. But wait, there's more. Because, as you notice, life isn't just about stimulus and response. It's not just about cause and effect. There's more. So, in effect, we can take that reaction to something negative, we perceive as negative, and what happens? We think about it, right? We think about, oh, that person. Why are they like that? Oh, they're the cause of my misery. And we create stories out of that reaction, that initial reaction. We create stories, we create judgments, we create imagination. Yeah. We might draw up some memories to be associated with that. Yeah. So that's called mental proliferation. Yeah. Proliferation. Not nuclear, although it sometimes seems like that. But mental proliferation. The expansion of the mind with ideas, judgments, from something very, actually, quite small. We just think it's big. So it's the mind's job to produce ideas, thoughts, judgments, memory, visuals, etc., etc. The human mind produces about 64,000 mental events a day. Think of that number. 64,000. That's a very active mind. Okay, which ones are the important ones? Yeah. Which ones aren't? Right? So our mind produces thoughts, and our thoughts, and our emotions, and our ideas, and our memories, it's like everything else in the universe, they're impermanent. Yeah. Emotion arises, abides, and then eventually extinguishes. A thought arises, abides, and extinguishes. Over and over again. And what we do is grasp onto something, a thought, a feeling, and we continue that pattern over and over again instead of letting it rest. Yeah. These are our habit energies of our reactions, of ideas, judgments, values. Yeah. All stemming from positive and negative things. So the mind comes up with what we call wholesome things, positive, beneficial things. The mind comes up with negative, unwholesome things as well. And we like to assign, yeah, right, this is good, that's bad. This is right, this is wrong. So we create these judgments. We call it a dualistic thinking. Yeah. Instead of understanding something quite often, we just, and I do this quite a bit. And we create a judgment of something. I create a judgment of something that pops up. Oh, this brother did this. Well, he's a poor practitioner, he shouldn't be a monk. Kick him out. You know. Or, oh, he's such a wonderful brother. We need to keep him. Don't let him move to another monastery. Yeah. So we create these dualistic views. And for some reason, we don't want to cross that border too much. You know, we don't want to cross those borders. It's not, doesn't seem natural to see that, wow, out of tragedy, something wonderful happen. Yeah. Out of very positive things, no matter how much we try, something can go wrong. Something can go wrong. Yeah. There's a story. It's a fairly popular Zen story. One day, this farmer had lost his cow. He was a poor farmer. It was just him and his son, eking out a living, scratching out a living. And one day he found the cow was gone. It took off. And so he went searching for it. And he arrives at his neighbor's and he asks, "Oh, have you seen my cow?" And the neighbor goes, "No, I haven't seen your cow anywhere." And that's really a shame. You know, how are you going to get by? How are you going to survive without the cow? You needed that cow. And the farmer goes, "Well, we'll see. Maybe." And so he goes searching for his cow. He searches and searches, and along the way, they found this wild horse. Wow, I mean, a horse is a big thing for a lot of people. And so him and his son were able to capture the horse, lead it back, came across his neighbor, the farmer, and said, the neighbor goes, "Wow, oh, you got a horse. That will make life so much easier for you. You know, even if you just sold it, that money would be so beneficial for you." So he takes it back. They corral it. His son tries to train the horse, break the horse in. And in doing so, he broke his leg. And the neighbor came by one day and said, "Oh, your son broke his leg. That's horrible. What are you going to do? I mean, you know, who's going to work the farm? Who's going to do everything that needs to be done? You must be having some real hardships." And the farmer goes, "Well, maybe." Okay. So a little while later, the emperor went to war. And all the young men were had a draft. They had to go. So, but his young son, he couldn't go. His leg was broken. So he was spared going off to war. Okay? Going on and on and on. We think this is horrible, what we're going through. We think these are difficult times because we want to call them, identify them as difficult times. But we never know where the story takes us. Yeah, I look at my childhood and I think, wow, that was a rough time. And it was a rough time. but it brought me to the place where I am today. Yeah. So, difficulties. Is it just difficulties? Or is there something else going on? Can we open our minds a little more to see a little more? It's very important. So, hatred, desire, and ignorance. The motivators within our minds. But we can take a look at this because in a little wider perspective, okay, a little wider perspective. Here we're talking about something very personal, individual, my mind motivated by these three factors. But we can also take a look at a little larger view of things. We can look at this in sort of a societal way as well. Okay. Because when we're talking about the mind, it's just not individual mind, but it's a collective mind. Okay. Whether it's in the unit of a family, in the unit of a neighborhood, a community, a monastery, a collection. Okay, the collective consciousness. And so we can take a look at these issues, these motivators, not only on a personal level, but we could look at them in a societal level, okay, as a cause of suffering and difficulty in our society, in our culture, right? So let's take a look at that. I think in a consumer society, we can all kind of focus on, eyes kind of go towards greed in a capitalistic consumer society, huh? So how does that play out in terms of climate change as a source of suffering? Yeah. In the back. Okay, the Arctic ice is melting, but why? Because of global warming, okay? But why? Because, okay, because of why? Yeah, yeah. We could talk about corporations. Okay, where the bottom line is profit. Never mind about the environment or the ramifications, but profit level. You know, how's our profits doing? And that's what fuels our society, right? Okay. So this desire, wanting more things. Yeah. The ignorance of it all. You know, when I was young, and some of you can relate to this, environmentalism was give a hoot, don't pollute. Yeah? Keep America beautiful. And that was the environmentalism of the time, right? Maybe some specialists knew, but it certainly wasn't in the collective consciousness. Right? Yeah. It was a matter of not polluting, you know, picking up your trash. But today, wow, what my nephew is taught in school and what my grandniece will be taught, it's a vast difference, isn't it? Now they're learning about whole new systems of climate and how these things operate and the processes behind them. Okay, I didn't get any of that when I was in school. So I, in effect, came from out of ignorance to awakening about this issue. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You know how the promise of the computers, wow, it's supposed to make our lives so much easier. Seriously? Wow, this is quite a complex little thing. And it took me quite a while just to figure this out. Okay, yeah. Yes.
I think also this or taking away.
Yeah, so that aversion of other people living differently. When you feel they should be doing this, but they're doing that. That's very different, and it's a very challenging thing to take a look at and come to terms with. Right? Okay. So we can see these things not just on a personal level, but on a societal level. And just as we need to find happiness in our lives, to reconcile and to look at these things within myself about my own greed, my own aversion, my own attraction, my own ignorance, and my own process, in my heart, in my mind. It's the same type of thing when I look at society. Okay, when I look at society. Because I see this very similar things that you do. I see the injustice. I see the issues coming out. Because like I said, I do read the newspaper. And I do talk to activists and people. And I do see the same things. Okay. But does that stand in my way of my own happiness? Okay. Not that these difficult things are to be avoided, but how do we change that relationship to the difficulties, what we perceive as difficulties? How do we change that relationship? So it doesn't drag us down to the depths of despair, to the despair, difficulties, hopelessness, and whatnot. Because we can do that to ourselves without the help of anyone else. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So how do we change that relationship in order to overcome our suffering? We can overcome our suffering, but there's still difficulties. Yeah? Yeah, there's still difficulties in daily life. Even as a monastic. Even though the conditions are so set to live a certain way, with practices and taking away all the extra stuff of life, that just the bare bones practice, giving these conditions. Well, I still have difficulty. Yeah, and challenges. Yeah. And I accept these things. Yeah, in the world there are people who don't see things the way I don't see them, and they're wrong. Yeah. Yeah. How do we change that story? We can continue with that story, and we can be miserable for the rest of our lives, if that's what one wants. Yeah, if that's what one wants. We can do that. It's very easy. Do you have a comment? Oh, okay. Okay. Why don't you go first? Oh, okay.
I don't know if you want an answer to that, but I think
on what's working and expand those things. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, we have to be there for our difficulties. Yeah, we have to accept that with what is within us that we produce. Okay. Instead of running away from them or avoiding them or somehow figuring how to get around them. That's Zen, right up there in your face. Yeah. Okay, there is my suffering, but there is my joy and happiness as well. That's right there. Okay. So, desire, hatred, ignorance, these things we take care of within ourselves. We take care of these things in our community, our families, in society. There's no difference because society is made up of minds. Yeah. Yeah. People, minds. Just want to check the time. Karma. Who's heard of karma? Yeah, karma. Karma means action. Pretty simple. Action. Action of body, action of speech, and action of mind. Not just action, but volitional action, intention, will. Okay. And the Buddha was observing the mind, looking at action and how that takes place. And it says in one of the sutras, I think it was the Dhammapada, the mind is the forerunner of all actions. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. If one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, suffering follows, as the wheel follows the hoof of an ox pulling a cart. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. If one speaks or acts with a serene mind, happiness follows, as surely as one's shadow. So here the Buddha was talking about the importance of understanding the mind, because it's the foundation of everything we do. Our perceptions, how we perceive things, how we digest things. We talk about people having rose-colored glasses, right? Because they have a particular type of view of the world. Yeah. So, the karma, action. And in Buddhism, this action has ramifications, right? Okay. Causes, conditions, and results. Okay. So you can say that everything in the past, everything that you are today is a result of your karma, your past actions. The way you think, how you think, the fact that I really like the look of a Maserati is based on my conditions from my past. Okay. Our anger is conditioned from our past. Okay. And probably the future. Okay. we live in a reciprocal mode or process of life. Okay. What I mean by that is, what we digest in the past, what we have digested through our senses, makes up our condition of today. And our condition of today, how we think, how we view things, will affect our future. Okay. So in the mind, we have what's called the alaya vijnana, or the storehouse consciousness. Down here. And it's called the storehouse consciousness because it stores things, right? Yeah. Kind of works as an unconscious aspect of mind, sort of the maybe memory in today's terminology. And in the storehouse consciousness, this is where our karma, you might say, this is where the karma resides. Okay. We call those seeds. Thai talks about seeds, talks about the consciousness is the storehouse. Everything that is in that storehouse, what's in that storehouse? Consciousness. All of our experiences from our past since we were born. And if you believe in rebirth, before we were born. Okay. And it's our container, it's also called the container consciousness. And these are the things that come up to our consciousness. And these are the things that determine how we look at something. The propensity of how we look at any given thing, how we process any given thing. Okay. Whether we look at something, we react angrily to it. Someone looks at the same thing, they find joy out of it. Someone looks at it and says, "Oh, that's pretty neat," and it ignores it and goes away. So we have various different ways of looking at the world and processing the world within us. And that are our karmic seeds. So this is what we operate on. Okay. Now, this has great potentiality. For one, if we're going back to the roots, if we're ignorant of this process, we're rather doomed to repeat the same things over and over again because of our habit energy. For example, having anger, great anger. You know, it's down inside of in the storehouse consciousness. And when conditions are present, it arises. And we may see that, we may not, but we react out of anger. Right? In the same way, the seeds of love, contentment are there as well. And when conditions are right, they manifest as well. Most of the problem is that we don't see these things. Right? It just happens. Right? It's just the way life is. Yeah. This is the importance of the practice of mindfulness and awareness. That's why the Buddha was the awakened one, because he saw these processes going on. He saw these processes and saw how the mind works and the inclinations, the habit energies of doing things unconsciously. bringing these things up to consciousness so we can take a look at these things and change the story. So, from our past, the conditions becomes results, and the results become conditions for future action. The way we look at things. I have to say, being a practitioner of many years, I look at things differently today than I did when I first started the practice. Yeah. Phap Vu's smiling. Because he knew me as I came into the monastery, and he was probably going, "Oh, what's with this guy? He's not going to make it as a monk." And that's what I call the power of the Dharma, the power of mindfulness. Okay. Is that the Buddha discovered we can change the record. We can change that habit energy. There's transformation, if we apply ourselves, if we learn to stop and take a look. That's why in the Prajnaparamita, the Mahayana Sutras, the Bodhisattva is a fearless Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is a great awakened being. Almost a Buddha. And why are they fearless? The sutras don't really say. I tend to look at it as because they're willing to go to difficult places. Yeah. Whether it's inside or outside. And they can digest that, and they can absorb that, and they cannot be carried away with the suffering or the difficulties within themselves or from those around them. Yeah, the great bodhisattvas. As a monastic, we as you notice, we're not a cloister. Probably thousands of people come in and out of the monastery in retreats and their mindfulnesses. And we talk to a lot of people. We do consultations. And over the years, I've heard a lot of suffering and difficulties. And when I first became a monastic as a novice at Plum Village, I wanted to help everyone. So anyone who spoke English. It's in France. So I was talking and sitting down with people, and they were sharing and their stories and whatnot. And, that lasted about 6 weeks. No, we're going to stay away. Because I had not had the type of practice yet to be able to take that difficulty and to process that other people's difficulty. And is it really their difficulty, or was it my difficulty? When we encounter something, we say, "Oh, that creates suffering." But are we avoiding that, or are we avoiding the actual emotions within us? We don't like that emotion, so take it away. And it's a practice. It's a practice. How do we work on creating these positive seeds? Again, we could sit here and we could make our lives miserable. We don't need help with that, right? So, how do we practice in such a way to have that suffering there and be okay. That takes practice. Yeah, practice. The Buddha talked about training. Okay. And, we call it practice. But in the sutras, it's called training. Okay. It doesn't just happen. You have to be willing to undergo training. We have to be willing to take up a practice. It's a very specific thing, right? Because things don't change. Things need a catalyst for change. Yeah. And there's a lot of references to training. Okay? Different similes, different stories. It would go typically something like the untrained mind is like a muddy pond, whereas the trained mind is like a clear spring. Okay? These different comparisons of the trained mind versus the untrained mind. Okay? That's what we do is so important. Okay? This is why, you being here is important. To take a step forward, to understand a little more, to develop the practice, to learn to be with the difficulties, learning to see things not in black and white, good and bad, right, ugly and beautiful, but to get beyond those boundaries, out of our boxes that we exist in and have been existing in. Going beyond what we perceive and the willingness to walk in that step. Sometimes it's a very difficult step because we have a lot of difficult things going on inside, in the world. So we learn and we train to practice so that we're not stuck in that groove. So we can see a little more and make life a little better for ourselves. Make life better for society. Make life better for the world. Not just ourselves, but everything that's around us. The plants, the animals, the mountains. Yeah. That's important. That's important. So what we do now, what do we do now? We have this huge crisis. Yeah, there'll always be difficult. If you look at the human species throughout life, since we were, Cro-Magnons, since we were Neanderthals and Australopithecines, they had their issues too. Yeah, they had their difficulties too. We have our difficulties, and we will continue to have difficulties, and we've come out of difficulties. In my parents' life, the biggest difficulty was World War II. That was big. Yeah, that was world big. But the question is not how do we get out of difficulties, but how we respond. How do we respond? How do we respond to the difficulties within us on a personal level? How do we respond to the difficulties of climate change? That's what's important. And unless we develop the awakening and the awareness of within ourselves. Yeah. There will be no awakening on a societal level. It's a direct relationship. Okay. So what we do here, it's nice that people come and smile and enjoy and practice and learn and connect, but it's important too. It's not just about coming to a place to feel good, but it comes to the place to learn, to be. Thank you.